break, ladies and gentlemen. Roger Stone's about to take over this hour. Next week, he's testifying in closed session to the Congressional Committee. Even his wife can't go in. So we're going to have reporters there to cover it all, but they want to have him in secret testimony. What they've done with other people that have testified is not let him have a record of it, then make up what they said later. So look for the committee, for Congressman Schiff to say, Roger Stone murdered a child in front of us. He said he loves Stalin. He's married to Putin. I mean, that's what they do. So Roger Stone's here. Paul Manafort, the word is about to be indicted. He's come out and said, listen, criminal investigation of the leaks, which are now confirmed, massive eggy wag all over the face of late-night TV, comedy shows, the Democrats. They're still reeling from that. What is the state of the war, Roger Stone?
You know, it just seems to me, Alex, that the deep state has now been unmasked themselves. Despite their vehement denials of wiretapping, their wiretapping came to the fore in the Manafort case, proving thus in one kind of sweeping move what many in the media had overlooked. The fact, first of all, that Mr. Clapper had testified under oath in front of the Congress regarding the wiretaps in an exchange with Senator Feinstein. He admitted that the widespread parameters focused at Trump Tower. And then when pressed for details, he kept saying, it's just too sensitive. I can't discuss it. It's too sensitive. This also reflects the incredible report back in March when Circa News reported that the FISA court had admonished the Obama NSA for the surveillance of at least 30,000 Americans, saying that this was, if I quote the court, there was an institutional lack of candor, that it raised very serious Fourth Amendment issues. The three networks, of course, ignored all of this. 1 out of every 20 searches by the NSA and their running dog lackeys at the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI was essentially for political purposes. So
this is massive scandal, 1,000 times bigger than Watergate. I mean, 10,000 times. This is gargantuan. And we also have Comey and the Justice Department lying under oath months ago when he was still director, saying no one has spied on Trump, either through FISA or through the Justice Department, or on any of his surrogates, or on Trump Tower, now a proven fraud. Let's play that clip. Then I asked Stone, why is it coming out now? Here it is.
Director Comey, was the president's statement that Obama had his wires tapped in Trump Tower a true statement?
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components. The department has no information that supports those tweets.
Okay. It goes on, but let's just not go to the rest. No components anywhere, anybody, when they are openly doing it and know they are, and had just bragged in the news, we got Trump, we've been spying on him. I mean, this is, talk about a jackknife. I mean, this is an explosion of buffoonery.
Well, Alex, I think notice that he chooses his words very carefully. First of all, I think we've now established without any question that FISA court warrants were being used to surveil Trump associates, including Manafort, Carter Page, and presumably yours truly. I do think that Judge Andrew Napolitano was correct when he said that M1 was actually conducting the surveillance on Trump himself. This gave their colleagues in the deep state deniability. Notice last week when Sessions said that there was no proof of the spying, he again said, there is nothing in our possession that would indicate that this happened. Now, it is false that Judge Napolitano was suspended by Fox. What happened was a dirty trick. Somebody told the LA Times that after hours on the East, so there was no way to deny it or confirm it. The LA Times ran with it as a story. It got picked up everywhere. In fact, Judge Napolitano was never suspended. He was off the air for 6 days on a planned vacation. Ironic that MSNBC and CNN came back and printed a correction, said he was not suspended. Fox never did so. However, the judge is borne out on May 8th, 2017, when Mr. Clapper, the director of intelligence under Obama, goes to the U.S. Senate. Let me read this exchange. Senator Feinstein. The Guardian has reported that Britain's intelligence service first became aware in late 2015 of suspicious interactions between Trump advisors and Russian agents, and this information was passed on to U.S. intelligence. Over the spring of 2016, multiple European allies passed on additional information to the United States about contacts between Trump, the Trump campaign, and Russians. Is this accurate? This is Yates, the former director. I can't answer that, she says. Feinstein, General Clapper, is that accurate? Yes, it is, and also quite sensitive. Okay, let me ask you about this. The specifics are quite sensitive. I can say no more. There you have it, Alex. Busted. Busted. You take the Circa story by Sarah Carter, which is one of the most extraordinary pieces of journalism that I've seen in the 40 years I've been in politics. Stone cold proof that Rogers, Brennan, Clapper, Rice are spying on thousands of Americans, as many as 30,000 according to the court, and then Mr. Comey is perjuring himself to cover it up.
We'll put the headline back on screen because there it is. It's now admitted they illegally spied on people for political control. Declassified memos show FBI illegally shared spy data on Americans with private parties. So they're caught red-handed. So I'll ask you the question, and then you're taking over. We'll skip this break so you have more time. Why is it coming out now? Because they know, like Conway said months ago, the president's the president. He's in there. He has all this. He knows it's classified, so he's not releasing it, but he knows they're lying. So how does this then go public, and what has smoked them out to now admit they're liars?
What's ironic here is that this was kind of a dead and buried issue. The fact that there was very little media coverage of the Circus story means that the deep state could heave a deep sigh and relax. Dr. Jerry Corsi, on behalf of InfoWars, was really ahead of this curve, writing detailed stories about metadata surveillance, including surveillance of Trump that goes all the way back into the 80s
including
and 90s.
the classified source documents.
Exactly. So Dr. Corsi first picks up the deep state spying on Trump, which has, I think, waxed and waned over the years. He's been on their radar, obviously, for a very long time. Now, Alex, the other thing that is ironic is that it's the Manafort case that brings this all to the fore. In other words, the mainstream media backed into this. When it leaked that Manafort was put back under surveillance by Comey. So recognize what they did here. They have Manafort under surveillance. It bears no fruit. They turn off the tap because there's no evidence of a crime. Manafort goes to work for President Trump, successfully runs his operation at the convention to seize the nomination and to avoid a theft by the Republican establishment, a 1952-style hijacking. And then they put him back under scrutiny during the transition, during the inauguration, at a time that he's in frequent contact with the president-elect and with myself and others.
So that's the NSA being used to try to steal elections in America. Unprecedented. Roger, you take over. Incredible.
Thank you, Alex. First of all, I do want to ask you to remember that we here at InfoWars don't have a George Soros or a Ford Foundation or a Rockefeller Foundation writing big checks to keep us alive. Alex Jones has an extraordinarily ambitious expansion planned. In Austin, you can hear them working in the next studio to build a super studio that is more sophisticated and bigger than anything we have already. And I must tell you, we have a great, hidden bunker there in Texas and a lot of talented people. But this studio will be something like anything you have ever seen. But this costs money. And we can't count on big corporate sponsors from the multinational corporations or hidden billionaires like the Clintons and the Media Matters crowd. So we ask you to the Infowars.com store. Now, among the things that you can get is the iconic Bill Clinton rape T-shirt. Now, this is a piece of history. If you read my book, The Making of the President 2016, which you can also get at the Infowars.com store, you will learn how Alex Jones put this item into the stratosphere, into the political lexicon. Believe me, folks, this T-shirt will end up in the Smithsonian. There are a limited number of these. This is a limited edition. When these go, that's it. We don't intend to print any more. Yes, you can get them at Stone Cold Truth at the store there as well, but that's all there is. Alex and I essentially divided the stock. So this is something you're going to want to have, something you're going to want to cherish, because it was a way to break through the mainstream media blockade, the roadblock, as it were, the blackout on Bill Clinton's real past. They kept calling him, they said he was guilty of indiscretions or infidelities when the issue was violence against women, rape. So I urge you to go to the site and get your Clinton rape T-shirt now. Also there, multiple other specials. I myself am a giant fan of Brain Force. This stuff is really great for mental clarity and mental energy. You know, when you're working, in some cases, 18-hour days for the cause of freedom, this is an indispensable product. I know that Rick Derringer, the rocker, tells me that he lives by it. I know that Judge Napolitano is a fan, and many people I know use this as a secret weapon. So, again, I commend to you Brain Force. Paul Manafort has dominated the news, and I think it's important to put his involvement with Donald Trump into some prospect. Now, admittedly, Manafort was an usher in my wedding, someone I have known since my college Republicans and young Republican days. Manafort and I both hail from Connecticut. Connecticut is one of the last states in the nation that nominates candidates for governor and senator and all statewide offices in a state convention rather than a primary. A primary can be secondary but can only be held after nominees are selected in a convention. Manafort came up through the college Republicans, the young Republicans, which are governed by convention's rules, Robert's Rules of Order, and whose structure is identical in terms of the way those organizations operate to the convention of the Republican National Committee. So if you know how to run a young Republican National Convention, you know how to run a Republican National Convention, because the structure, Rules Committee, Credentials Committee, Platform Committee, and so on, are identical. The Republican National Convention is governed not by federal law, not by state law, but by its own rules. In 1952, the Republican nomination for president was hijacked. Senator Robert Taft, a conservative favorite, got to Chicago with enough votes to be nominated, but the skillful convention politics of Dwight Eisenhower stole that nomination when Taft delegates were unseated in Texas and Louisiana, replaced by Eisenhower supporters, and the rest is history. Paul Manafort joined the Trump campaign at a time that Donald Trump had lost Colorado, lost Wisconsin first, then lost Colorado, lost North Dakota, and delegates were stolen from him in Louisiana. Manafort brought a convention expertise that I think is unappreciated. There was, in fact, a rebellion within the Rules and the Rules Committee, which Manafort crushed. Now, it's important to recognize that the Rules and Credentials Committees are made up of 2 members from each state, and prior to Manafort's involvement, no one in the Trump campaign was paying attention to the fact that though Trump might sweep a delegation convention, the 2 appointees to the Rules and Credentials and Platform Committee could be hostile to the candidacy of Donald Trump. Manafort, in my view, not only put on a terrific convention, the highlights of which include the Rudy Giuliani's fiery speech, excellent speeches by the Trump children, and there's no question that Trump aced his acceptance speech, and Manafort left the campaign the legacy of putting the candidate up on teleprompter, letting him riff off of it, but essentially keeping some form to his general election messaging. And this is essentially the grand strategy that Steve Bannon oversaw and pushed. And Manafort was right. Trump was quite effective using this medium. Not like Barack Obama, where he has to read everything off a teleprompter, and God knows Trump can and does riff. Now, Manafort has therefore became a target for the Clinton people. The Clinton people feared Manafort. They knew him well because Manafort had actually done some business with the Podesta brothers. And they had worked together in the Ukraine for a political party and a candidate in a Democratic political election recognized by the United States State Department, and a party recognized by the United States State Department, for which Manafort was paid. That's not the same as lobbying. It is political consulting. But the ledger that the New York Times would write so much about, that showed Manafort taking a payment of $12 million, turns out to be a forgery. As Lee Stranahan revealed here on InfoWars, the prosecutor in that matter now says the ledger tying Manafort to improper payments is a fraud, and that there are no pending charges or case against Manafort. The New York Times, of course, has not put this on page one. Manafort would ultimately resign from the Trump campaign because he knew that his business activities were becoming a distraction. He left reluctantly, but I think loyally, but continued to give advice to President Trump and to members of the Trump campaign. And we continued to confer. It is now clear that Manafort was being surveilled regarding his relationships in the Ukraine, and that surveillance yielded no improper activity. In fact, it was ended. Manafort's surveillance is turned back on immediately after Donald Trump is elected president. This is to spy on Manafort in an effort to find something that could be leveraged against the president. And in fact, we now know that Manafort is surveilled during the transition, during the inauguration, in conversations with President Trump, myself, Jared Kushner, and others. This is a political fishing expedition. I'd also point out to you that it is in this period that Ms. Rice decides that she is going to use the surveillance information to unmask Trump associates. And the reason she tells the Congress for her action is that she learned that President-elect Trump was opening a back channel to the Russians, which he has the authority to do, which is entirely his right and his prerogative as a president-elect. And that he did not yet begin the dialogue. He merely went to a third party or met with a third party to discuss it. So in other words, she is interfering with the president's foreign policy prerogatives. That does not make her use of the data not a crime, although interestingly enough, Trey Gowdy and some other Republicans seem to indicate that they thought this somehow absolved her. I don't see that myself. So it is, at this point, I think the question is, why, in the face of all of this, are they going after Paul Manafort? When they kicked in the door of his apartment at 5 a.m. in Alexandria, Virginia, and then jimmied a lock to get into the bedroom, they were lucky he wasn't carrying a firearm because they had not identified themselves. They then ransacked his entire apartment, were there for 5 hours, and they photographed all of his custom-made, high-end Italian suits. Perhaps they're going to bring a charge against him of taking a tax deduction for these fine garments, but I seriously doubt that he would do so. Those in the business know that many years ago, Ozzie Nelson, the band leader, tried to argue that because he appeared on television, his suits were a business expense, and this was disallowed. So, Alex Jones, don't try that one, although I don't think you would. I have been told by my accountant that there's no chance you can write off the suits. How unfortunate. But they took away 2 different binders of documents, which Manafort had already turned over. What's going on here? Let's be as clear as we can. Mueller seeks to find some charge against Manafort that does not relate in any way to Russia. Money laundering, tax evasion, failure to file with FARA, and then go to Manafort and say, look, Manafort, unless you want to go to jail for the rest of your life, or for a long period of time at least, you'll admit that you were colluding with the Russians, and you'll say that Donald Trump knew everything. In other words, they want him to bear false witness against our president. They want him to lie. Now, this is a man who managed my campaign for Young Republican National Chairman. This is someone I have known my entire adult life. When he was working for Ford, I was working for Ronald Reagan. He's a tough nut. He is a tough customer. He's an Italian-American, and he's very stubborn. He will not lie. He will not roll on our president. He will not bear false witness and say whatever the government wants him to say. I've known Manafort my lifetime, and I think he's done nothing wrong, but they are trying to destroy him financially, as they have me. And when I come back, we'll talk about the House Intelligence Committee. In the meantime, Roger Stone, sitting in for Alex Jones. God bless you, and hit the Infowars.com store because we need your support. Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and you're here on the Alex Jones Show. This in from the White House. As we reported here at Infowars, General John Kelly continues to try to crack down on any communications with the president that doesn't go through him. He has successfully managed to squeeze out the president's longtime bodyguard and confidant, Keith Schiller. We have learned that Schiller's showdown with General Kelly revolves specifically around a link to a news story that Schiller showed the president, which evidently General Kelly did not want the president to see. It is extraordinary that Keith Schiller is leaving. It is even more extraordinary that the president is letting him go. But our sources say General Kelly gave a him or me ultimatum to the president. Schiller is nothing if not the loyal soldier. He's not talking. He is just telling people he's returning to that he is going to Boca Raton, Florida, where he will open a new security firm. But friends tell us that he is unhappy with this term of events and, of course, concerned about his oldest friend and leader, the president. Now, I have heard that there is an upside to General Kelly's activities. Among those who are now being squeezed out and whose contact with the president has been entirely cut off is Omarosa of Apprentice fame. Now, Omarosa has been the subject of a number of reports here before because when she joined the White House staff, she quickly emerged as an advocate for the government of Jovenel Moise, or Mose, I guess it's Mose, who is a puppet for the very same people who worked with Bill Clinton and his wife to essentially steal all of the earthquake aid, billions of dollars, leave that country not only plagued with malaria, but without housing, schools, roads, bridges, hospitals, literally the financial rape of Haiti. Incredibly, Omarosa persuaded President Trump to send a delegation, not from our State Department, but from the White House, unheard of from a diplomatic point of view, to the inauguration of this puppet government, who had only been elected after 2 elections, both of them marked with widespread fraud. The fraud in the first one was so public that the election was thrown out. The fraud in the second one was a little better concealed, but not really. And the theft of Haiti, the rape of Haiti, continues. This is about extracting the minerals, the oil, the gas, the other trace minerals of which the country is rich. When the federal government response to the earthquake was led by Hillary Clinton, the UN response was grabbed by Bill Clinton. Consequently, the contracts for housing and other enormous big-ticket items went to Clinton cronies who in many cases had never built a house in their life and still haven't. So why was it that Omarosa, a staunch Trump supporter, would be fronting for the left-wing puppet corrupt government of the Clintons and their allies? Well, the answer is a Democratic consultant named Ron Daniels. Daniels, who is a charming political power broker, hosted Omarosa in Haiti in 2007. She also would travel there with him on other occasions. The government that she has endorsed is already under investigation for narco trafficking. And the president campaigned openly with Guy Philippe, who the DEA has under indictment and who says is perhaps the greatest drug trafficker in Haiti. This is who Omarosa helped empower. So in the case here of General Kelly squeezing out Omarosa, while it does not make up for the mistake of purging Keith Schiller, it is certainly good news for those who recognize that the president has not stepped up on his commitment to the people of Haiti. The president was very critical of the Clintons' activities there and said he would stand up for the Haitian people. He's very popular among Haitian Americans. Indeed, he's popular in Haiti overall. But he needs to keep his commitments, and when we help that nation, the money should not go in the pockets of oligarchs and narco traffickers and the financial elite run by Michael Martelli, who was a former president and who is running the show. And that's the story on Omarosa. Now, I can tell you that I have read Hillary Clinton's book, What Happened? What happened? Well, it's really not complicated. The American people found out that the Hillary Clinton who was presented to them by the media in the 2000s as Senator Clinton and then Secretary of State Clinton was not the kindly grandmother that she depicted herself, not the elder statesman, but in fact a short-tempered, venal, self-centered, egotistical, entitled, greedy, vicious, nasty, and foul-mouthed woman. This is the portrait of her that you can see in the Clintons' War on Women, the book I wrote, which is the essential oppo dump on Hillary and her co-conspirator husband. Never think that they are not a team, despite the fact that they do not have a child in common. But it is interesting that in her book, Hillary Clinton says the following. Then, on August 8th, Trump's longest-time consigliere, Roger Stone, who cut his teeth as one of Richard Nixon's dirty tricksters, bragged to a group of Florida Republicans that he was in communications with Assange and predicted an October surprise. This was a shocking admission made in public from Trump's longest-serving political advisor. Stone made similar statements on August 12th, 14th, 15th, and 18th. On the 21st, he said, "Trust me, it will soon be Podesta's time in the barrel." As I have noted, we had a good chance that Stone's email might have been hacked, but we didn't know for sure. Stone kept at it. She goes on to say, meanwhile, Roger Stone continued to tweet warnings that WikiLeaks was preparing to drop a bomb on us, one that would destroy my campaign and land me in prison. He was such a bizarre character, it was hard to know how serious to take anything he said. But we didn't know what other dirty tricks may be coming our way. I'm bizarre? Hillary Clinton banished Bill Clinton's abandoned son, Danny Williams, and essentially consigned him to a life of poverty, her husband's own flesh and blood. That's at the same time she's telling us she thinks black lives matter. Well, they don't matter if you're Danny Williams. Hillary Clinton is the one who hired the heavy-handed private detectives and nasty lawyers to badger, threaten, intimidate, and bully the various victims of her husband, either rape or sexual assault victims. How do we know this? David Brock's book, The Education of Hillary Rodham, documents it precisely. Who's bizarre, Mrs. Clinton? To be very clear, Julian Assange in WikiLeaks tweet on numerous occasions that they have the goods on Hillary and that they will release them. This is not rocket science. When I said that I was communicated, I had in all those cases qualified by saying that Once I read this online, I had asked a journalist friend to get me a confirmation, which he did, off the record. Therefore, we have the information on WikiLeaks in their tweets, and we have confirmation. Yes, I definitely reported it right here at InfoWars, among other places, also at the Stone Cold Truth, and in my Twitter feed. It all turns out, of course, to be accurate. This is Hillary Clinton, again, aping this argument put forward by Adam Schiff, the real Schiff head, who is the head of the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. By the way, I don't know why they call it that in view of the facts, but it is also true that she buys into the whole notion that I knew about John Podesta's email being hacked in advance. I never said anything of the kind. FactCheck.org, financed by the Annenberg Foundation, has confirmed that there's just no evidence that that is the case. Now, I learned from Dr. Jerry Corsi in an extraordinary opposition research memo that he gave me on October 1st that I will be admitting as an exhibit in my testimony next week, about the extent of John and Tony Podesta and Bill and Hillary Clinton's business dealings in Mother Russia, that they were the ones in bed with the oligarchs around Putin. There's the uranium deal, the banking deal, the lucrative Gazprom contract, and that the entire narrative was now fair game. Let's remember the context. The Clinton people are dumping on Paul Manafort at this juncture, and they are hounding him out of the Trump campaign on the basis of nothing, when they themselves have worked with Manafort on Ukrainian issues. Little hypocrisy there, no. And then, of course, the charge that Trump is in bed with the Russians is invented by Podesta himself to distract from these relationships. In other words, there was a candidate in bed with the Russians. Unfortunately, that candidate is Hillary Clinton. Her book is largely unreadable. It's clear to me that she did not write it. She regurgitates the same lies about Guccifer 2.0, that he was a Russian asset. We don't know that to be true. Or that the Russians hacked the DNC. In fact, that even appears to be unprovable. It is the basis of the lawsuit against me by the Obama front, and of course they cannot prove that in law. In fact, based on the Nation magazine article of several weeks ago, and the writings of not only the experts William Binney and Ray McGovern, both counterintelligence agencies high in our intelligence bureaucracy before they riffed out and started telling the truth, both of them indicate that based on the science, the download times, and other measures, it's far more likely that any information stolen from the DNC was loaded to portable drives, most likely thumb drives, and taken out the back door. The Democratic diplomat, Craig Murray, says that he received this material. He implies that is from Seth Rich, but he won't say, and that he passed it on to WikiLeaks. Case closed. This problem solved. But the U.S. Congress has voted to punish Russia for the hacking that they cannot provably be tied to. And it is an article of faith. Indeed, I would say the absolute premise of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees in Mr. Mueller's investigation is that the Russians hacked the DNC, something that, again, we have no proof of. I'll be speaking about this, of course, in my testimony before the House Intelligence Committee next week. What Alex Jones told you was true. They insist to this day that this be behind closed doors, even though Adam Schiff and Congressman Swalwell and Congressman Spire and Congressman Himes and others in this retinue have slimed me in public, have said things that are demonstrably and provably not true in public session. They now, of course, do not want to allow me the opportunity to respond in public session. What is it they fear? I mean, I have very little experience on television. I think it would be a fair fight, but they're not interested in that. They're interested in cosseting me. They will not agree to an immediate release of the transcript. They'll let my lawyers examine the transcript at some point later. So we've seen this act before. You testify to the best of your recollection. You have a lot to say. And then they mischaracterize. They lie about what you said behind closed doors, that you love Vladimir Putin, that you want to move to Russia. Who knows? As someone whose family was mowed down by Russian tanks in Budapest in 1956, the idea that I work for the Russians is offensive. It's also a lie. Doesn't matter how many bots on Twitter say, Stone, you're a traitor, you work with the Russians, you're going to jail. None of those things, I assure you, is true. So you people don't have much to look forward to. But in this particular case, they will not even allow my wife to enter the room. They will strip search us or make us go through mags. There'll be no recording devices. They want no record of what they intend to do. All 20 members of the committee will be present. There'll be 2 questioners from the Republican Party, 2 questioners from the minority Democratic Party. The Republicans have named their questioners. They are Trey Gowdy and Tom Rooney, both very able and decent men, and I think good legislators. And the Democrats have yet to name their designated hitters, but one would have to hope for Adam Schiff and perhaps Jackie Speier. That would be a day at the beach. But let's see how this works out. I am going to have an InfoWars camera embedded with me in the hours both before and after my testimony, so you're going to get an inside look at how this works right here at InfoWars. You're not going to want to miss this. We're going to Disneyland on the Potomac, folks, and we're going to face down the deep state and their running dog lackeys on the House Lack of Intelligence Committee, where they are running out of steam on the so-called Russian meme. There we see Chris Ruddy at Newsmax using the worst possible photo of me that he could find. It is going to be informative, and I think it is going to be very important to recognize that the entire Russian narrative, their Russian delusion, collusion, is running out of steam. I am going to release my statement in advance, as Mr. Comey did, and I'm going to clear up a lot of misconceptions that have been put forward by the committee. Follow these developments here at InfoWars because they're going to have it first. We are going to meet with the media both before and after my session to make sure that there are no misrepresentations about what happened. I want to ask you again to take your part in history. Go to the Infowars.com store and get your Clinton rape T-shirt. When these are gone, they are gone. They're a part of history. They're going to end up in the Smithsonian. But when you go to the store and you buy these for your family, and I'd get as many as you could, you're helping the fight for freedom. You're helping our expansion. You're helping us to continue to be the tip of the spear and fight for the Trump agenda and the Trump nationalist reform fight, the vital struggle for the survival of America and Western civilization. So please, go to the store and you can accomplish all that. I'm Roger Stone, and I'll be back. Thank you, Mr. President. When I worked for Richard Nixon, behind his back, we would call him RN, or 37. That was the affectionate staff name for him. Called me on my birthday every year from 1974 till the time he passed. A truly great American who negotiated a arms limitation treaty with the Russians, opened the door to China, ended the Vietnam War, desegregated the public schools, and of course saved Israel from annihilation in the 1973 Yom Kippur War over the objections of Henry Kissinger. Quite a record, domestic and national, particularly when you compare him to our more recent presidents. I am Roger Stone, of course, sitting in for Alex Jones. Some of you know, and we broke the story here, that I had been sued in the District of Columbia, along with Donald Trump and the Trump campaign, by a group of Obama associates clearly fronting for the former president, including a former White House counsel. And the allegation in this harassment lawsuit is that I worked with the Russians to hack the DNC and give the information to WikiLeaks, the very question being examined by the House and Senate committees, and a false narrative that continues to bounce around the mainstream media. My lawyers have now moved in court to dismiss and also to clarify with what's called an anti-SLAPP motion. Now, when these lawsuit was filed against me, I was in Austin that day. I remember it quite well. It was dizzying how much coverage the allegations in the lawsuit got. But when we filed our response eviscerating the lawsuit and we made those documents available to the media, well, it was largely crickets, with a few notable exceptions, where some legal-oriented websites printed stories. But, of course, the truth never catches up with the lie. This has been an expensive fight. I've already incurred over $150,000 in legal fees just for the preparation of these papers, and recalling that I also have to have attorneys who accompany me to the House and Senate to walk through those rodeos and those fishing expeditions. If they cannot sideline you, if they can't destroy you or beat you in the election, perhaps they can bankrupt you. I think that's what this is about. I'm not in as tough a shape as, say, Paul Manafort or General Flynn, whose legal fees could run to the millions. But if you want to help, my friends have set up a legal defense fund. It's called WhoFramedRogerStone.com, WhoFramedRogerStone.com, kind of a clever play there on an old movie. But you can read about the challenges we face, and you can make a contribution, and I would be most grateful. Alex Jones has made a contribution for which I am very grateful. This is going to be a fight, and I cannot bear it alone, and I appreciate your support. Speaking of support, however, we really need you to go to the Infowars.com store, where you've got an extraordinary number of specials going on. I strongly like the Emirates Essential line of organic household products, which are 50% off. You're getting zinc oxide, herbal bug spray, peppermint mouthwash, unscented body wash, pure tree shampoo, long-lasting natural deodorant. None of the chemicals, none of the phony stuff that's in there. These are health-oriented, all-natural products, the very best you can get. So, folks, help yourself. Help us here at InfoWars. Help the fight for freedom. Help the fight for the First Amendment. Help the fight against the tech left as they seek to censor us. I'm Roger Stone.